What's going on? Another episode of Save the Date. I'm one of your hosts, Heath.
What's good, everybody? It's Jamie. Yo.
Always good to be back in the saddle. What you been up to?
I was about to say something crazy. I just out here being a child of God. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, caught himself in the sin. So, I'm
out
here beating
just
and
out
licking.
Here drinking water and minding my business.
Yeah. I'm out here, licking and considering.
Nah. I was about to say slaying these hoes, but
yeah,
I'd be lying like a mug, bro.
Exactly.
I'd be lying like a mug.
Just be in the books. That's what you need to be into. And guys, you can check us out at Save the Date Now at Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And today's episode, the title is, drum roll please. It is called, it's the content stupid. Play off the famous words and phrases used when we talk about politicians running for positions in this country. It's the economy stupid. That the economy is the default issue, and it's always the issue on the table, even when the issue isn't on the table. And we're talking about content because it's content stupid, meaning all of the Save the Date React videos we're going to show you today and content that we'll show you, it's all about showing everyone this is all content. Nothing is real. Nothing is anything that you should be following with any kind of religious observance or zeal. And while you should be interested in the people that are, preparing and publishing the content, you should be more interested in what the content's doing for you. How do you integrate it into your framework and move on? Not to become consumed, obsessed with the people who are presenting and publishing the content. So we're going to have 3 videos for you today. Well, 3 pieces of content we're going to show. First, we're going to open up with the big news around Yada Awakening, that his wife has come forward and said that while you may be bedazzled by his wonderful principles of service as a husband and uplifting his woman, that he's been committing domestic violence against her. Second video we're going to talk about, or second piece of content, is just really talking about Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan, I believe, who have been exposed in court that their wealth is not what it seems. And lastly, we're going to talk about what's been burning up the internet over the last couple of days, the Lindsay Clancy trial. For those who don't know, it's a woman who's been accused of unaliving her 3 children and recently raised $1 million on her GoFundMe for her legal defense. All 3 have been making the waves, the last one making the largest wave. And we want to talk about it because, again, the golden thread in this tapestry of this entire video series, or this video rather, is it's the content stupid, talking about how it's just content. Sounds circular, but we're going to get into it. Let's get into the first video I'm going to share here. And we're not going to show all of it, but it's enough for you to see here. Hold on one second.
Demanding respect within your home is because you're not handling your responsibilities as a man. Good women don't get upset for no reason. Good women don't complain for no reason. They're tired of repeating themselves. If you want a woman to be submissive, give her something great to submit to. You men have given a woman the devil, and you're trying to figure out why your home's in a state of hell.
I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I'm hurt. But I know I'll make it through.
The favorite panderer. This is why
I don't want to get into other people's opinion.
Man, he's so funny to me.
All right, let's get into it. Yada's message. What has it been about for the last year and a half? It's been about showing and highlighting the importance of men putting themselves in a position of service, leadership, and love in their homes. That men should always be about, focused on, and emphasizing how they can bring joy, opportunity, and blessings to their homes, namely to their wives. That a man's purpose and his sole reason for existing, especially if he's married, is to bring nothing but abundance and a showering of blessings into his wife's life daily. He talked about in his own personal life that he has a business that he shares with 2 wives, one here and one in Africa, that he pays him $250,000 a year, and I think $250,000 a kid, and all of the ways in which they live in opulence, because not only does he share himself, but he shares his business and his assets copiously and abundantly with this woman. I even saw him do a video where he took his child's placenta and somehow he put some seeds on it so that it's kind of petrified, or I would say petrified, but, remain sustainable, that you can use and show, and talked about, what happens to women postpartum. And here we are with his wife, one of them talking about what happened to her postpartum. And that will come up against the Lindsay Clancy trial as well, to talk about women in postpartum, which Again, Jay and I will say we're not doctors, we're not social science researchers, we're commentators and men of media, and we speak from a place of being well-read and educated about certain topics and ignorant on others, but we're men of media, and so we speak from that particular vantage point as being exposed from a wide variety of content and various different lenses that we've been exposed to anecdotally or through research, meaning we've reviewed literature about a particular topic. Back to Yada. What's your take? First go, now that this has been exposed. This isn't new, but now she's coming forward and confirming it.
Well, I mean, like we talked about offline, this is something that is not a surprise to me because apparently, from what I understand, this is not the first time she's come forward. It's just that she didn't come forward last time on video. Before it was just written testimony.
Yeah, there was a police report, I believe.
Yeah. So it's just like, this is not new news. We know that something like this has happened before. I think it's appalling anytime a dude is, let me just say in the context of domestic violence, if this is your partner and you have a trusted relationship with them and you're breaching the trust by causing them physical harm, bringing physical harm to them, I think that is evil, devilish, nefarious, all of the, negative adjectives and descriptors you can apply to that. But I think, the big thing about this is it seems like it's a situation that a lot of women can find themselves in if they, drink the Kool-Aid of I can provide for you on the front end, which a lot of dudes, they make that offering very early and they know how to do it in a very adept way where they can, position a life. They can sell you this dream of you'll be taken care of, bags and shoes and dresses, shopping sprees, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm pouring into you financially. But when this emotional piece is called into play, you find out where there are, tears in the armor. And I think, to me, it's a cautionary tale. Like, I think because there are so many women who say that they want a provider, just understand that a provider could be a veneer. You may not know who that person truly is behind all of that. So like we talked about with Clay and Meg, don't always be taken by gestures. What someone can do for you, you still need to know who they are as a person, their personhood, their personality. Maybe you need to see how they talk to their mother, how they relate to the women in their family, all of those different types of things before you just jump on the coattails and just ride that wave off into the sunset and end up in the golden cage.
Yeah. So those are all great points, especially the points about domestic violence. And thank you for surfacing it and naming it. I think it's important that we as men do that. The Yada piece. So I like Yada. Well, rather I like Yada's message. I'm a big proponent of it. Some things I've mentioned on the podcast I didn't like. I don't like calling men dusty bums. I don't think name calling, categorizing in that manner is helpful. I understand, for example, in the message we just witnessed, some men will treat their women like hell and then wonder why they're getting the devil and never asking why their home is in calamity, recognizing they've been the tornado that's torn through their home multiple times a day. What I think people should take from this is what I said. It's the content, stupid. What we're witnessing on social media is theater. We are unfamiliar with this medium, so we're comfortable with theater being theater. We've been having theater happening in the Western world for over 2,000, 3,000 years, going back to the Greeks. And again, Western culture and in African culture, you can say there's been certain forms of what we would call theater there. Dance, ritual, and what it means. But in the minds of those communities, they understood the purpose of their ritual, their theater. When someone pulled out a gun and shot it and they used red ribbon for blood like they did in Zootopia, that person wasn't shot, that they were doing something to emphasize a point, highlight a particular plot device, or illustrate a part in the story where there's death. Not that that person on stage died for real. We're comfortable with that with film. You could see Arnold Schwarzenegger fight 8 guys in one bound. Do you guys really think that you could fight 8 guys in one bound, in one go? Some people do, unfortunately. But from some of us who are sane and aware, we understand that is just film.
Theater, yeah.
Theater. And I believe we have to apply that same type of lens to social media. There are characters that have inspired me over the years. Triple H from WWE, Wei Shin from Sleeping Dogs, Sasashimaru from Inuyasha, butchered his name there. Sylvia Zoldyck from Hunter x Hunter. Whether it's this idea of being, a dude who's muscled up, who knows how to defend his family, to an individual who is lean and ready to go. There have been instances where these character designs or the character story has inspired me. It's been a muse for me to work on myself so that in real life, I know I'm not going to become Triple H. I'm not going to become Wei Shin, for example, but these characters motivate me to think and be different as a man and as a human being, or someone who's setting a goal, especially around body goals, becoming a body guy, right? Working, building muscle. That's great. The problem is when you start to think that the person who represents the character is real, or that their quote unquote real attributes could be real to you. Yada is great. I encourage every man to take Yada's message and just observe it for the content that he brings, not to follow Yada. Because I think what's happening here is what they used to say happened in the black church. You get so caught up in the personality of the leader as opposed to the spirit of the message, which is what you're really there for. And the personality of the leader is great until the leader falls, or the leader shows themselves to be false, or the leader doesn't really have a rap on the things that they say they have a rap on or a handle on. And it's important for people, I think, to take Yada's message and see how they can integrate it into their life. Maybe you can't pay your woman $250K for every baby. Maybe you can't have 2 wives in 2 different continents. Maybe you don't have a profitable, thriving trucking business that's netting you X amount of thousands or millions of dollars a year. Maybe you're just making $80,000. But what can you do to signify and highlight the importance of the woman you're with and how important she is to you, whether that's an extra pair of Birkin shoes, unless maybe that's a special gift you can give on a birthday. Whatever it is you can do financially and emotionally, then do it. And I think that's the point you should walk away from Yada's message. Not that you need to become Yada. Not that you need to become this minister who's on social media, marketing himself, marketing his message, and showcasing his family. I think many of us will look at a Yada and say, I need to be that. And if I don't have that, then something's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with you. You're at where you're at for now. You could become someone else to do the things you need to do to have the things you want. Beautiful part of life when you have been blessed and you have the privilege to do so. He had the privilege to do so and he did it. You have the privilege to do so if you have it, and then do it. If you don't, put yourself in a holding sequence till you get there. Nothing wrong with that. That's why I had a problem with the no dusty bums allowed. Because I really don't think a lot of the men who don't deliver are dusty bums. I think a lot of men are lost, and some men are just trying to figure it out. But I have a problem when you connect what you can do for a woman materially solely to your value and worth as a man and as a relationship. It's important. It has its place. And I obviously do think that there's nothing wrong with that request, because I know I'm going to request sex and head and other things that I want. So far be it for me to demonize someone else's request. And I'm not going to say, well, making love is a part of the body. And I'm not going to spiritualize my request. If I have a request and you have a request, that means we're equal and we need to listen to each other and see how we can make these requests become a reality. That's how I see it. But when you go beyond that point to demonizing, labeling, categorizing, and in some ways subjugating yourself, becoming your own slave master to achieve a look, to achieve a particular goal that someone else has either marketed to you or you've accepted because of where they're at as the highest expression of masculinity or love, I believe you have a problem. And this is the issue, I think, with Yada. Now, it's unfortunate this has happened. I don't want to bring him down. I don't know all the details. Obviously, she's come forward as a woman and said, this has happened to me postpartum. I tried to, dismiss it, but here I am. We'll see what happens next with him and with what people following him and what he will say. But this is a very important message. And I think example that we're going to have to hold close to our hearts if we want to talk about what does it really mean to address some of the issues that are happening in the quote unquote manosphere or the larger man world, dealing with male loneliness epidemic, men not being able to make money, men feeling displaced, men feeling out of whack, out of sorts, disconnected to women, disconnected to the world. I felt like Yada was sprinkling some light in a good way, but also with the no dusty bums allowed and some of the harshness was closing off men in other ways as well.
Yeah. And I think it just goes to also show people just have a dichotomy. You can have somebody who is purporting these messages and, promoting these messages of love and service and being a provider and all that type of stuff. But they could also be falling short of that. You know what I mean? I think this, to your point, this is the reason why you don't follow the person, but you follow the message. Because, the message is evergreen. But the people and how they show up, they're not going to always meet the mark.
Absolutely. And speaking of a segue to talking about following men who are showcasing their wealth and showing you that you can achieve that wealth and market their ideas, their ideologies, and their networks as top tier, top G, top boss. Let's make a beeline now over to the Tate brothers. For those who don't know, Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan were arrested recently in Miami, awaiting extradition to Britain for criminal charges, typical to the charges, my understanding, that were levied against him or were put on him in Romania or Hungary, where he was at. And it came out, guess what? The wealth you thought they had and the riches they were highlighting and showcasing isn't that true. So let's cut into it.
The yachts he parties on, the houses he lives in are all court that all of the fancy cars he drives, the yachts he parties on, the houses he lives in are all rented. He does not own any of them. Despite pretending that he owns all of this stuff, his lawyers are now saying in a filing, a promotional video filmed aboard a yacht is not evidence of title to the yacht. As set forth in the motion, the super yacht does not belong to the Tate brothers. They receive payment to promote the ship on social media. Further, the Tates are engaged in several businesses teaching men how to earn money. It is in their interest to portray themselves on social media as uber wealthy. For example, the $2.1 million Aston Martin and $5 and $7 million Bugattis featured in Tristan's videos were rented. Also, the valuation of Andrew's watch collection is based on a third-party enthusiast publication, not a real valuation. They've always been grifters, and now they're facing the music. Anybody who flexes wealth like this probably doesn't got it like that.
Let's talk about the Tate brothers for a second. Sticking with the theme, it's the content, stupid. The Tate brothers have said several things that I disagree with. They have represented themselves in values that I am on the opposite side of. They also have said some key things that I believe are important for men to hear. I've said this before on the podcast. They talked about the difference between fighting and violence. Andrew Tate talked about that. Andrew Tate talked about, recently, is it important for a man to be good looking? He goes, I don't think it's important for a man to be good looking. I think it's about confidence, energy, and how he presents himself, really, which is at the core of male attraction, or women are being attracted to men, which I agree with. He said some other interesting points over the years, some social, political, some about men and how they, in general, on average, I believe, construct their world, that I believe has bite. It has gravity. There's gravity to it. There's thought to it. And I think there's resonance with it. But for the most part, I am not a devotee, nor am I an acolyte, nor am I someone who's in agreement with him and what he was marketing and what he was saying. I feel like there was a lot of problematic statements and a lot of problematic postures and positions that he took over the last 4 years since he burst into the scene, really 2021, 2022, when he took over TikTok with his brilliant marketing scheme, and it was brilliant. But I think what Andrew offers is, again, another example of it's the content. Nothing wrong with being good looking, having the shades, having the body, having the martial arts background. He's a kickboxer, and coming from a prestigious chess lineage. As we know, his father was a very famous chess master, and he comes from I think somewhat prominent black family in Chicago. I think his grandfather was a lawyer on the black side. His mom's from Britain. Nothing wrong with all these things. And I think if you aspire to build a body like Andrew, to build a look or a presentation for yourself, as Andrew recommended, I think every man should. I think every man should invest in themselves, in their body, in their health, in their mental health, therapy, and also in being able to find passions or pursuits that will net them income, keep them independent and thriving. For every man, that's going to look different. One man, it may be moving up as a sanitation worker. Another man, it's going to be moving up on Wall Street. Both are equally valuable and worthy. So this is an important point to make. Andrew did bring out certain parts of male growth that I think men should listen to. Do I think you should become, like I keep using this word, an acolyte, a follower, a fanatic of the Tate brothers? Absolutely not. Do I think they're the healthiest examples of what it means to be masculine? No. I think there's some bright spots there, but after the bright spots, I would not tell any man or young man to aspire to do what they do or say what they say when you look at the whole entire comprehensive overview of what they say they represent and what they stand on. But you can take the meat and throw away the bones for those who are mature enough to do that, for those who feel led to do that, for those who feel competent enough to do that. But again, when you start buying into the messenger behind the message and following them lock and step, you start to see that what everyone's marketing to you, what everyone's saying about themselves is either untrue or marketing speak, which may be a
let
more
the abstract embellish on the cut.
I just think that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it's the content. And I think it's evident in what they've presented that they wanted to look a certain way. They wanted to appeal to a certain audience. Namely, it seems like men who are looking for their track to coming up, being able to be better earners and, whatever that affords them after you become a good earner, whether that's a young, hot girl or the car or the house or whatever it is, whatever you think comes with that uber rich lifestyle, that's what they were promoting. And I think from just on its face, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They're in a line of a bunch of content creators who are doing the same thing. They might have been using, misogynoir and certain, things that like hot button topics. I think they would use a lot of that to appeal to these certain people, almost kind of like the way Trump does, even though I feel like his is a little bit more genuine. But yeah, I mean, I feel like what they presented to me, I never saw an issue with it. I've seen some of the things that they were involved in or charged with that are problematic. I mean, anytime you throw on the word rape or trafficking, I think that's an issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like you said, in terms of what their content play was, I didn't really have an issue with it. And I mean, to be honest, from what I read about this whole admission thing, it was kind of forced. It was something that their lawyers did to basically make a plea to the judge that they're not a flight risk. I don't know if this is necessarily them being exposed, you know what I mean? The way that it's been presented in the media. It's just kind of like, I think what the creator was saying definitely makes sense. This is in line with what we're saying. It's not everything you see in social media is real. So sometimes these people that you consume their content, you're looking at them as, well, they have to be the embodiment of what they're promoting. Because that's what consistency looks like. That's what validation is I can't tell you about something or present something to you that I haven't done myself. So I think, yeah, a lot of people were saying, well, wait a minute now. Y'all have been saying y'all are uber rich this whole time. Y'all got yachts and Aston Martins and Bugattis and all these different things and, multiple passports and this, this, that, and the third. And it's like, that's normally the lifestyle of like a James Bond type of guy. And you guys aren't James Bond.
Yeah, they obviously, listen, they obviously are millionaires, I think, or at least on some extent. To what extent, I don't know. I don't need to be in their personal finances or business.
Yeah.
But I do think that what they were flashing and what they were showing was indicating that they got it like that, and they don't, and it's fine. It's rented.
Yeah.
It's rented. And like they said, their whole thing is working with a large community of men, obviously for value exchange. They give them advice on how to level up as a man, and they pay them. That was their whole university they had. And it was working out very well because they have the look, the style, the build, the history, the lineage, the smarts. And I believe Andrew is a remarkable speaker, very adept at turning a phrase in a word. And I believe that he showcases a level of intelligence to deal with some of the constructs and concepts that are being marketed quite frequently online regarding the manosphere, what I would call, what some people may argue called digital feminism or feminism. He's adept at that. I mean, he knows his audience and he knows how to speak well and he presents well. I remember that show where the woman from the UK goes on dates with guys and she went on a date with Andrew Tate. Afterwards, she said, listen, Andrew has everything he says he has. He has the looks, the style, the build, the class, the elegance, or whatever she said about him, not to be, putting words in her mouth and as far as our compliments towards him. But she says, my concern is that many of the men who will adopt his message and try to become him, exemplify his values, will not present as he presents and will not have what he has. And so will be finding themselves, for lack of a better words, in the doldrums of the dating world. Because it's one thing to be Andrew Tate, Peter Thiel. Well, Peter Thiel's a bad example of what I'm saying, but Elon Musk, and say certain things, be caustic and be braggadocio about who you are, even Jeff Bezos. But it's another if you don't have that access to wealth, that access to those networks, nor do you have access to a plan to become someone who has access to that wealth and access to those networks. It's just something that has to be considered when you talk about following a messenger. Again, I'll say it again, it's the content. Can you take what works for you and put down what doesn't work for you?
Yeah, that's hard in the social media sphere. It's hard to separate the meat from the bones because people just want to be, they just want to be in the comment section and just give a hot take. And that's what dialogue about all of these topics has become. Just like, let me give my hot take and start all of these meta conversations about something else that's might be adjacent or related to the larger topic, but it's really not about the topic. Because I mean, these two like you said, everyone knows what their content play has been since 2021.
Mm-hmm.
We're selling the look. We're selling the veneer. And even though, we don't own this stuff, it's actually to me, it's a smarter investment. Like we haven't
I
wasted
don't
the
think you
money
should
that
own
we
that stuff.
had. Yeah, we haven't wasted the money that we've acquired on things that are going to depreciate. But it was, a part of what we did. It was part of our persona to be driving around in these luxury vehicles. It was, part of our persona to be on this yacht and to say we have all of the fly suits and this, that, and the third, and we're around all of these models and we sleep with all these different girls. Like that was part of the persona. So everyone knew what their client play was. It's not like they're being exposed in that way. So you don't necessarily need to have a highly educated opinion on who they are, or what they do.
Well, what I didn't get is if you're on a yacht and the majority of your audience is guys making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year, we know that's the median income for men around in many places. How are you marketing a yacht to them? I mean, I guess you were just paid to be on that yacht, and those yacht makers or builders want just young men to see their yacht. And I don't know what payoff that is for that brand, because Aston Martin doesn't really need to market itself to me, because Aston Martin's going to get people who can afford Aston Martins to buy them, and they use, to my understanding, different channels to get to those potential customers. I mean, Aston Martin, you had me in the first James Bond film.
Mm-hmm.
No, you had me in Goldfinger. I think he was driving an Aston Martin in Goldfinger. So it's just interesting to me to see like what that payoff. Now, you said a very astute point. Maybe this is all just a ploy by the lawyer to get the hounds off their back. That doesn't mean I don't think some of it's true. I think it is rented. That doesn't mean that they're broke or false. It just may be a way of them showing, hey guys, we're not. If your accusation is that we're leading a lifestyle, getting rich off child, whatever they're being accused of, where is that coming from? Like, how are we doing that? What are we showing and highlighting? I don't know, because I don't know the details of their trial or their charges. I just know my understanding they're supposed to be extradited to Britain, so I don't know how that's being managed from here going back to the UK.
Well, at least from what I read in the New York Post, that's the reason why the lawyer made the statement, because prosecution was basically trying to keep them here so that because they were initially saying that they have all of this money, they would be a flight risk if we let them leave. So the lawyers had to say, no, they don't own all of this stuff. All of the mention of multiple passports, all of that was, to what he said, which the words that you used earlier, it was theater. This is the role that they played to do what they were doing. So that was the reason why they came out and said that they don't own all of these assets.
Yes, you did say that earlier. Thank you for hammering that point home. Perfect then. Then they ain't got it. But I guess they'll figure out. But I know apparently he's having a hard time in prison.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he
was just talking about the waters hurting his stomach. It's just horrible conditions. Federal prison that he's arguing isn't up to code.
I mean, not for nothing, bro. What do you do with rapists? Allegedly or otherwise, we know what, let's say we lightly know what the prison culture is around people who have that crime associated with them, or that's on their paperwork.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he's in PC, because he wasn't talking about he's fighting every day. He's just talking about the straight up conditions of the prison are inadequate, and he can't get a decent meal. And it was about the water. I think one of the tweets I saw hurts his stomach. So, we've heard these complaints before. We've seen these conditions surfaced before by former inmates, current inmates, and sometimes prison advocates, anti-prison advocates.
Yeah.
So speaking of the whole legal process and people being embroiled in a legal battle, let's talk about Lindsay Clancy. This is a mother who has been accused of unaliving her 3 children. I believe at the time she had thrown herself out of the window. Let's just go ahead and look at this reel here. And the reason we're talking about this is because she has garnered a lot of support, mainly from women who are identifying and sympathizing a lot of what people know about this case so far, her story, what she wrote in her diaries, and the realities of postpartum. There was a recent a piece of research published about 2 or 3 years ago that said that researchers are starting to recognize that postpartum for women may even last 7 years. And she had 3 children under very, very close together, and apparently was having a very hard time, and then went into a episode where she then allegedly unalived her 3 children. The reason we're bringing this up is to say one thing. Jamie and I have spoke at length right now in this episode. It's the content. And I think it's important to note that people are getting caught up in becoming trial lawyers, sociologists, social science researchers, lawyers, forensic accountants, forensic experts, forensics researchers, forensic scientists. There are a bevy of highly qualified individuals that can speak to the myriad of issues that are being presented in this particular trial. Everything from what's being prosecuted on a criminal level to what is being done and talking about the psychological and emotional realities of a young mother, and a young mother who's experiencing a mental health relapse or deterioration in the effort to keep her family alive and keep her family vibrant. Many women can identify that. Jay and I are not women. Jay and I are not mothers. And while I don't think it's important that everyone needs to have the lived experience of another individual to discuss an experience, I think this is a highly charged, most importantly, sensitive topic that requires expertise that goes beyond what we're able to deliver. What we did want to talk about when it comes to this case is not the actual case, but to talk about the phenomena that we're all familiar with as a dating podcast. And that is, once again, we're seeing the line in the sand, social politically, cause relationships to erode. And this is one example. A man calls off wedding 2 weeks before after fiance says she supports Lindsay Clancy. Can you go to the next carousel? And this is the apparent, alleged conversation. Apparently the woman says, so you're really breaking up with me over a fucking opinion. And the response is, I'm not breaking up with you over an opinion. I'm breaking up with you because the opinion showed me a fundamental difference in our values. I can have compassion for someone struggling mentally without, excuse me, what's that say there?
Without excusing what happened to those children. If I'm choosing someone to potentially be the mother of my kids, I need to trust their judgment completely, especially when it comes to protecting them. What you said created a doubt in me that I can't ignore or gamble my future children. That's big. That's big. That's big. I mean, we talked about this offline. You know, we saw the same kind of dynamic around Trump and the election, 2024. I mean, people drew their line in the sand, and it was really like, if you're on that side, I can't mess with you. I mean, I think we saw it also with the Clay and Meg thing. Mm-hmm. We saw it with the situation, I believe it was down in Virginia, where it was an official that had unalived his wife and his children.
But yeah, the gentleman who was an alpha Duke Law.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We saw with that. I mean, I think to your point, what you said, I think what it really reflects is it's another opportunity to drive a wedge between men and women, and how the lines are really becoming like almost cemented. Like if you think this way, you're over there, I'm over here. And as Shakespeare said, never the twain shall meet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what's scary about this is it continues to underscore how much healing really needs to be done, but it may not be done because, to go back to the theme of the episode, it's the content.
Yeah.
We are allowing content to determine and dictate how we interact and understand each other instead of letting each other determine and inform how we interact with each other. Well, you're in a relationship.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the relationship should be about two people learning how to communicate, listen, and respond to each other amicably, lovingly, and respectfully. Yet our social media concepts, our social media diatribes, our social media debates, and our social media arguments are informing us on how to relate to our significant other. And people are drawing hard lines that I don't know are truly coming from them, or is it coming from what they think they should represent based on a quote unquote tribe or a vibe or a sentiment that they're building and interacting with online.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've talked about this. A lot of people are more connected to their devices and social media than they are to people. And I mean, that's what we were saying earlier. That's what a lot of us are swept up in. So yeah, I mean, content, social media, creators, they definitely have a lot more sway. Even the episode we did 2 episodes ago where we talked about the Eat, Pray, Love and the game, we later found out that those people were going, through their own addictions and things, and that their nightmares had become a part of so many people's love story. And that was before social media. So you can only imagine now how much people are swept up in, what, like you called it, whatever the soup du jour is of the day. That's what they're caught up in. And the dynamic with social media is just that. It repeats all of the narratives in your echo chamber, and all you do is just tribe up and click up with other people who think and feel the same way.
Yeah, the guy from 154 Africa runs the podcast with Godfrey said to Joy Reid that he feels that the whole purpose of these tech companies is to leave us with ourselves, that we become asexual creatures that rely on the phone. The phone gives me my peace. The phone gives me my solace. The phone gives me relief and fulfillment when I'm horny. The phone gives me relief and fulfillment when I'm angry, sad, kind, or mean-spirited. Everything that I need is coming through what they can deliver through this mother box. And whatever she or he or they can do for me, because they don't mean anything to me. Because guess what? Your whole approach to me is because I could go onto a video and analyze 53 things about you that tell me, quote unquote, tell me that you're unfit, you're not worthy, you're not trying hard enough, you're inadequate, you're subpar, you don't make the grade, and standards. What standards you gonna meet? Standards of a garbage can. That's all you can give me. And I see men and women doing it to each other, both sides.
Yeah.
Writing people off because they saw a social media post. Over time, they've allowed multiple social media posts to seduce them into a position about themselves that's, I think, false and doesn't really resonate with who they are, or is false about their partner and what the problems that their partner are presenting, or their partner is presenting. And by problems, I mean problems. I think we need to really think concretely about this if we want to be action-oriented and really starting to allow people and empower people, more importantly, to really start forging healthy relationships again.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's going to be hard because of how people are hurting. I think people turn to social media, whether it's the narratives or characters in social media, because real people have hurt them. They're scared to interact and to engage and to open up and be vulnerable with real people again. That's why online personalities are flourishing. You know what I mean? You could do so much with them and you can show up any way you really want to. I'm talking about online personalities just as in what you present online on a dating app profile, your personal profile. It's like you can put and publish all of the good things about you. No one ever really has to know anything bad about you. And that's what people end up dating at first. They end up dating this character with all of this good that they've engaged with. And then when they actually find out that this person has a flaw, they're ready to tuck tail and run. Because wait a minute, you're supposed to be this. You're supposed to be this person who didn't have these flaws. When I met you, your profile said that you go to church or you do this. And now, you know what I'm saying? Now that I'm interacting with you IRL in real life, I see that you have flaws. But that's just, I think to what we're saying, that's just a byproduct of being so heavily engaged with a device or a digital profile or digital footprint. That's not what's real about people.
I agree. And hopefully Save the Date can be a part of the movement, among others, to successfully engage with people honorably, respectfully, lovingly, and helping other people find their pathways to connect with others in a similar fashion. Because this is getting to a point where we're really losing the thread and we're losing the opportunity to build life together. I keep saying on this podcast, this nation is in population decline amongst a bunch of other nations. You can attribute it to many factors. Some people say it's environmental, chemical, we're putting pesticides, people can't have babies. But I also think a lot of it's social, and we've lost the thread of how to connect with each other with love and understanding and respect and with listening. And those will be foundational to building thriving relationships. They're the long way, but taking the long way is going to be the healthier and better way in my estimation. And we lose that quite frequently when we rely on social media to lead us. Listen, this is a very painful case. This isn't the only case. Dr. Judith Joseph just on her page highlighted a Black woman, at last name Blair, who went through a very similar episode, unalived her two boys. She felt that she was being attacked by the Illuminati. Same place, Plymouth, Massachusetts. Remember Plymouth? I remember Plymouth Rock, Plymouth, Massachusetts, and she's doing double life. No real conversation about the type of mental health issues that were ongoing with her. And that doesn't mean Dr. Judith Joseph is making this large argument about, mental health is the reason why these is happening. Dr. Judith Joseph is a psychiatrist and who is a thriving online personality and deals with many different concepts around mental health with skits in a very comical and also an engaging way. But, the point is, there's many layers to this case. And I think when we get into it, everyone becomes a trial lawyer. Everyone becomes a person who deals with these cases from a point of being an expert. Unless you're an expert, you can't deal with it as an expert. You can just be someone who's just
Give your social
a
commentary
person
and
of
keep
media.
it pushing.
Yeah,
Keep it
a
pushing.
person of media.
Yeah.
But when it starts to push this divide again and there's no basis for communication, it's crazy. And I think some people are scared because 3 children are dead. Let's deal with the reality. 3 children are dead. Very scary for people getting married, for people who are starting relationships and want children, knowing that you can't be everywhere with your children. You got to leave them with your spouse. It's very scary.
Yeah. Almost as scary as what we talked about, women having to be hyper vigilant about giving their number out.
Yes.
Yes. We used to say, well, why is it so hard for them to give their number out? I can't get to know you and I can't show you what kind of man I am unless I can talk to you. But they're like, listen, I don't know what kind of news you're reading.
Yes.
But,
yeah.
Women are giving their numbers out, going out on dates and not making it home.
Yeah, for
so,
sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I think in the same way, people are this guy is talking about, I can't afford to take a gamble with my children. You said something that made me feel like, I don't know if I could trust you around my kids. If you're supporting someone. Now, like he said, I can have sympathy on someone who's going through, who's struggling with a mental health issue, but we're not going to excuse what happened. And I think that's always going to be where the divide is in a case like this, is some people want sympathy for the circumstances that led to, but how do you extend that to what happened? You know what I mean? And I think it's just that is where you need to rely on the legal code and the legislation or whatever's in the law, because in our own concept and understanding of right and wrong, a lot of us would get that wrong. We talked about being just and loving. Where's the justice and where's the love that could come from a case like this?
Yeah. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Not
Most
yet,
of us don't.
Yeah. How can I?
Yeah.
The argument is she criminally responsible for what she did? And I think some people are saying, well, no, she's not criminally responsible. But I think I saw one guy say that his wife had said that she totally understands and vibes with everything that you see in her diaries and the circumstances that most women can identify with being overburdened, overworked, and overwhelmed as a mom with 3 children, feeling that maybe your husband is not doing what he needs to be doing, or just a cognitive load that he can't resonate or connect to because he's not going through what you're going through. How can I know what it's like to spacewalk? I've never been an astronaut. I've seen it. I've talked about it. I've dialogued about it. I've read about it. We've seen it on TV. Now people are saying you can't really spacewalk. We don't go to space. It's happening in some kind of, locked away studio. But all jokes aside, unless you talk to someone who's spacewalked before in the International Space Station, been outside, in what we call space, you wouldn't be able to talk about that or identify that. Right. Think about the training and the preparation that goes into being able to sustain the kind of forces and elements you have to deal with when you're spacewalking. I get it. You don't have that lived experience. So how can you relate? And I'm married to someone who just can't blankety blank relate. And I'm under siege here. And what do you do when you're under siege in a marriage? And then some guys, some men, not all, may not listen, may not even try to identify. They may not have women in his life that he's bonded with or learned from who can help and grow and learn in this capacity. It's a very harrowing experience as far as the circumstances that are being discussed that potentially, and in many cases, people would argue, led to what she's being accused of. So with that said, everyone, this has been another episode of Save the Date. Want to thank you for listening to us, vibing with us. Again, the term, or rather the title of the show, it's The Content Stupid, is a play off the idea when politicians run for office, is the economy stupid, that the economy is always the issue on the table, even when it's not on the table. And so for us, we want to keep in mind that the content is on the table, even when it's not on the table, to keep in mind that it's just the content, and take what you can from it, deal with it, address it, build it up. But you don't have to follow a messenger or rely on it to bring you down or destroy you. Again, check us out at Save the Date Now, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Until next time, until the next episode of Save the Date, I'm Heath, joined with Jay. Take care.